This is a production of the Z-Talk Radio Network. The views expressed and opinions given by the individual hosts and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Z-Talk Radio, its affiliates, or sponsors.
It is Monday night, and it is your favorite show. It's your favorite time. You are listening to The Buzz on ztalkradio.com. You've got your favorite host. You've got Kevin Thompson, and tonight joining me is Al Warren. Say hello, Al.
No, this is Molly.
Oh, well, gee, Molly, what happened to your voice?
Well, I've got a sore throat, that's all.
Oh, and that explains the accent as well.
Well, yeah. I was watching some Canadian TV, and I kind
of... Well, things happen. You can take it from there.
Yeah.
So, Al, what has been going on with you?
Oh, start with me.
Yes. Well, you're more interesting. Everybody knows about me. You're more interesting.
No, you're more interesting. You're fascinating. What's new? Well, I've been working real hard at getting those two new shows launched, and I've had to replace 2 computers and do about 8 ads all this week. So it's been a little bit busy.
Now, when you say 2 new shows, tell us a little bit about these new shows.
Well, tonight, one of them is the Julie Sav show. Now, she's from England, and she's been a co-host on one of my shows on and off for the last year. And I kind of met her through Dr. Karen O'Keefe.
Mm-hmm.
So he was on Most Haunted, in England.
Yes.
And I got a hold of him because being a medium and being very logical, I had a real conflict. And I wanted to get his take on it. So we ended up communicating, and I ended up studying with him. He's a parapsychologist. And so did she. And so we met that way. And she runs Real Paranormal in England, which is a group that goes around and does investigations, and she does lots of group readings. Like, she goes on stage and does readings for up to a couple hundred people.
Now that has got to be tough. I mean, I have a tough enough time just with one person, but both of you guys have done readings for, like you said, for large audiences. I know this is a little bit off topic, but I've been meaning to ask you or Julie, how exactly does that work? How do you know who the message is for, and how do you sort all that out?
Well, you don't, and that's the thing. For me, and for people I know that do it, kind of like when you get to the hotel and you're there before the day before, or when you have to be all by yourself for a while. And it's not that some people meditate, some people. For me, it's just being alone and not having any social media, not having any of that stuff, and you just sort of I don't know, you relax, because it's a tremendous amount of stress, because so many people are there for a reason, and it's usually a little bit usually something very sad, or usually someone they're trying to connect with. And so you just have to put yourself in the state of mind that you're just going to go out there and do it. And whatever comes to you, comes to you. And you don't know. That's the biggest stress. But I'll tell you what, every time you get out there and when you start doing it, it just seems to work.
Now, Julie is a medium, and we're going to talk to her a little bit, we're going to talk to her tonight about this a little bit, but I kind of lost the question because so many questions are popping up all at once. Have you watched her work? And I mean, is her method similar to yours?
Yeah, exactly. Sort of. We're both kind of in the, you've probably seen John Edward. Of course, he's big and American.
Mm-hmm.
Doing it. We're kind of more in that family, if that kind of helps.
Yeah.
It's really unusual, because what you see on TV and when you see of him is edited, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it takes like you're there, it's a couple of hours, and they'll edit it down to something really short, so it looks like it's all smooth and pretty perfect. It's not.
Oh my God, no! It's not very smooth and perfect just with one person.
No, it's not even close. But I'll tell you what, like I said, when you go out, you just sort of say it. I think the hardest part is saying it so you have some tact. Because sometimes you don't. Sometimes it's coming across to you a certain way, and when you're first doing it with groups, you just sort of put it out there. And from your point of view, or from the person doing it, the medium, when you're first doing it, you're trying to connect. So you say it as raw as possible, but the reality is sometimes it can be kind of tactless or a little bit harsh. So you have to learn how to filter it a little bit. Because believe me, you get tons if you've got a big audience and you're standing there. When you get beyond the pressure, because when you're standing there, the very first few times it feels very weird because you're being watched, and you have to kind of that's why you have to be alone. And some people, like I know, that meditate beforehand. For me, I've got to listen to really, really intense dance music.
I've got plenty. I've got gigs and gigs and gigs of it.
Well, because you got to put yourself in this. You got to. It's almost like, because dance music, or just like really strong heavy metal music, has a beat to it and a speed to it that you can go with, and it takes you to a place, so you can sort of work yourself up to going out. That's what works for me.
You are absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's trance.
Yeah,
Trance
exactly.
is very specifically designed to, elicit certain mental and emotional responses, and that's what I do.
Yeah,
I
and
try
that's how
not.
it works, right? Because when you're listening to it, right, and you're listening, because what happens, people either love dance or they don't. And the reason is because people that don't get that, they just hear the beat and they hear some, and they don't get it. Like, it's not. You've got to be able to adapt to this, where it puts you in this state, and then you can follow through, and you hear things in the music that a person wouldn't if they're not. They're not. It's hard to explain, but I think you probably get it.
No, I absolutely do get it. I mean, I understand that completely. I try not to listen to anything that's going to get me angry or get me worked up. So, no news. I try not to listen to no news. I try not to listen to any talk radio, as hard as that is, as difficult as that is, because that is so tempting. But I listen to a lot of trance music. Or here lately, Al, and you might want to try this, and then we'll talk a little bit about the second show. Brainwave entrainment, or like binaural beats. I have been experimenting with that for about the past 2 to 3 years. And that seems to work incredibly well. Although the results are short-lived, for it only lasts about an hour, but that really seems to work for me.
Well, I haven't tried it.
Well, the theory behind it is the beats are set just apart, just enough. You won't hear it, but they're set apart just enough that it actually causes both hemispheres of your brain to sync up.
What if you only have one hemisphere?
Well, then I guess it'll work twice as hard. So, but before we run out of time, because Julie's actually going to be joining us at 8:20, so we're going to go to our first news break, and Julie's going to be joining us.
And we're going to get people angry by going to the news break.
Oh no.
Yeah,
makes for
you listen to news, you get angry. So
it's happy news. It's NPR. It is so neutral you won't even realize it's there.
Okay.
So,
okay, we'll let that one go then.
But tell us a little bit about your second show. You've got a brand new show coming up in September.
Yeah, Dark Shadows. It's oh boy, how do I explain that?
It's starring Johnny Depp.
Yeah, exactly. No, actually, it's a much better version than that. No, it's no, it's sort of deal with paranormal. It's sort of an all-around show. We kind of touch off on weird supernatural stuff, and it's going to be from a Canadian point of view.
Uh-oh.
Why is that uh-oh?
I don't know. I never really thought about you having another point of view because we think so much alike.
Well, we do have just from what I mean is a lot of the murders and sinister stuff that we cover, and a lot of the people we have on, because we're going to cover everything from anything that's hidden in the dark shadows. It's almost like opening up, shining a light on something that is not really clear. You can't really see it. So we cover everything, conspiracies, and we're just dealing with a lot of people that do the job up here. So just like Julie doing it in the UK, there is a different perspective, and there's different people that are popular, and there's different feelings in each country about what they believe in and what kind of equipment they use and what they sort of do when they're on an investigation, and it's just kind of a full gamut, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's more educational than it is entertainment.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. With Julie's, it's going to be real exciting because she's actually we're going to record live at some of the investigations her and her team do, and edit it for the show.
Yeah, that's what she was saying. I was like, my gosh, I imagined doing that a long time ago, and I'm glad that somebody is finally going to actually be able to do it.
Yeah, I think it's totally a great idea. It's totally It's very interesting, and it's something that I can't find when I'm searching the radio at night, the podcasts, and I'm looking to listen to something. They're all sort of the same, and I don't mean that,
Mm-hmm.
but none of them are doing this sort of. You can't just tune in and listen to what happened when they searched a certain castle or a certain thing. So I thought that's really cool. It's something that people watch on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Why not?
And she's got all the experience. I mean, she's got an absolutely impressive resume. I mean, she's a genuinely good person. Let me tell the listeners just a little bit about her. Julie is the founder of the paranormal group Sixth Sense Paranormal Investigations. She's been a radio host and has previously worked for Psychic TV. And as I've got right here, her love of linking the two worlds has led Julie to bring about some real comfort to those who have lost loved ones, and she fully understands the responsibility that her being a medium brings. And that is an absolutely incredible responsibility. Working with the spirit has led Julie to work with a team of balanced, and Al, that's probably the most important word here, balanced investigators using mediumship as only one of the tools to bring the evidence of the existence of the paranormal. And and let me kind of sidebar here for just a moment before we go to the break. When you are looking for groups, and I'm speaking to the listeners now, when you're looking for groups to actually do an investigation, look for that. Look for that balance. Don't just go with the first group that comes around. Look for credibility, but look for balance. Because even your most advanced, your most experienced groups sometimes lose touch. And they can go off the deep end, Balance is, I mean, Al, it was said perfectly.
Balance.
Balance. Yeah, you
Well,
don't just run off on the tech side. You don't just run off on the psychic side. Use them both. Use one to verify and validate the other.
exactly. Well, and I know from knowing her, she's really concerned with just helping the people in the situation
Mm-hmm.
when she does investigations. It's not so much about anything else. It's about just getting some sort of resolution or just helping people. So she's very involved in that way. It's a good thing. Balance is really important. I know yesterday, you'll have to ask her, she just did a live event for readings and all that stuff in England that was, I think, for breast cancer. So all the money went to breast cancer, not to, and none of it went to her.
That's probably another really, really good, important thing to look for too, is what are their social activities? Are they a group that's just out for themselves? Is this a group that's just, out to, hey, look at me, I want a TV show? What are they actually doing to help, society, the society that you live in?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I'd much rather see someone doing the job and doing it the right way and naturally doing what they do, become televised or become famous from that, rather than, what I'm saying, rather than to be famous for
All the wrong reasons.
all the wrong reasons, which we have so much. We have so much of it now. It's about the looks and the hair and the and
The
the
hey,
clothes.
look at me, there's five
Yeah, and
cameras on the
content
set.
becomes just nothing. It's just empty. I don't know, I don't find it that pleasing. There's not a whole lot that I'm watching right now on the television anymore, as far as paranormal.
Oh, well, there's a whole new season coming up.
Well, yeah, there's some new shows I've
Maybe
been
it'll be
playing.
different.
Hopefully something, something
Bes-
different.
Besides, if we are doing our jobs right, Al, people will be turning off the TV and they will be tuning in to ztalkradio.com for 3 damn good shows. So,
Okay.
hey, You heard it here first.
Yeah, we did.
But,
and remember, this is Molly.
oh,
tune into L. Warren's show. It's great. That's coming from Molly. Now, I wouldn't send you to the wrong place.
Not at all. Well, everybody, we're going to go to our first news break, and when we come back, we're going to be joined by Julie Saville. And if you'd like to call into the show with your questions or your comments, you can call in at 262-672-2488. And we will be right back, everybody.
Fox News Radio, I'm Jane Metzler. A lower court judge tossed California's death penalty. Now an appeals court is reviewing that ruling. Fox News Radio's Jessica Rosenthal has the latest live.
Jane, a district judge said California's death penalty process is so filled with delays that it ends up being arbitrary, and so he said it was unconstitutional. His ruling overturned the penalty for convicted rapist and murderer Ernest Jones. Paula Mitchell's the legal director for Loyola's Project for the Innocent.
What you end up with is a system whereby inmates are kind of moved to the front of the line, if you will, just because they got through their appeals process faster.
The state argued delays occur because they're making sure the inmates' rights are protected. During arguments today, the Ninth Circuit justices seemed most concerned with Supreme Court precedent and if this issue really belongs before the state Supreme Court, Jane.
Thanks, Jessica. California hasn't executed an inmate since 2006. He faces the death penalty. White supremacist Frazier Glenn Miller gave jurors the Nazi salute after they convicted him this afternoon on capital murder and other charges for the fatal shootings of 3 people at Jewish facilities in the Kansas City suburb of Overland Park. None of his victims were Jewish. A Texas man, suspect Shannon Miles, could get the death penalty if he's convicted of the brutal murder of Sheriff's Deputy Darren Goforth at a service station in Houston Friday.
Shooting and killing him from behind as the 10-year veteran of the Harris County Sheriff's Office refueled his police car. While investigators search for a possible motive, the sheriff himself believes that his deputy was a target simply for wearing a uniform. Miles is being held without bail.
Fox's Casey Stiegel and 7,000 new emails from Hillary Clinton to be released 2 hours from now. Fox News Radio, fair and balanced.
Today, my new dad and I shot off a rocket in the park.
Today, my new son and I failed to shoot off a rocket.
He knew exactly what to do.
I had no clue what I was doing.
We set up the rocket.
Hit
ignition. And then
nothing. Ha 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 ha. Sometimes I laugh when I'm frustrated.
Then out of nowhere, the rocket launched into the air.
The rocket did get into the air.
I've never seen anything fly so high.
And then crashed into a kite.
Look out! Look out!
And then the pond.
I'll never forget that day.
I'll never forget that day, even if I tried. You don't
don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of kids in foster care will take you just as you are. For more information on how you can adopt, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
President Obama has arrived in Anchorage, Alaska for a 3-day visit. He's discussing oil exploration and Russia's military threat with the state's governor. The nation's highest peak in North America getting a new name. Its old name, Denali.
The mountain had been named for the late President McKinley, who was from Ohio. And today, Buckeye State lawmakers denounced that change, saying the Obama administration pulled an end run around Congress to do it.
Fox's Kevin Cork, native Alaskans had long called the mountain Denali. A prospector decided on his own to change it when he learned McKinley was a candidate for president. That was before McKinley was elected and later assassinated. Still up in the air whether he plays this week or not. No agreement reached today between the NFL and one of the league's star quarterbacks. A judge making a decision tomorrow or Wednesday on Patriots quarterback Tom Brady's Deflategate suspension. A wild night at the VMAs, from memorable duets to an announcement about running for president next time around.
Taylor Swift's Bad Blood took home Video of the Year. Best Female Video and Best Pop Video went to Blank Space. Swiftie not only opened the show with Nicki Minaj, another winner for Best R&B Video for Anaconda, but introduced Kanye West, this year's Vanguard Video winner. It was only 6 years ago when West dissed Taylor for beating Beyonce. The always controversial West ended his speech with a promise for the future.
As you probably could have guessed by this moment, I have decided in 2020 to run for president.
Breakout Artist The Weeknd earned 2 awards, and even though host Miley Cyrus changed several times, she remained barely clothed throughout the entire show. Michelle Polino, Fox News Radio.
On Wall Street, the Dow down 114, the NASDAQ off 52. I'm Jane Metzler, Fox News Radio.
The views expressed and opinions given by the individual hosts and their guests do not necessarily reflect those of Z-Talk Radio, its affiliates, or sponsors.
Well, everybody, we are back. You are listening to The Buzz on Z-Talk Radio, and you're here with Al, Kevin, and joining us this evening, as promised, is Julie Saville. Hello, Julie.
Hi, how are you guys?
You know, I think we found out off air. I am doing pretty damn good.
You sound it. You sound it.
I was telling Al, man, I've been in a little bit of a dark place here for a little while, but it's all over with now, and I am feeling pretty damn good.
Fantastic news.
So tell us a little bit, Julie. You have got a brand new show coming up on Z-Talk. Al kind of give us a little bit of a preview, but you tell us about your show.
Well, it's really exciting stuff, Kevin, because I've known Al now for a couple of years, kind of off and on through many different projects, and having the opportunity to host the Julie Sav Show was really important to me. And I co-hosted with Al a few times on the Warren Exchange, and absolutely love the paranormal and some of those, I suppose, unanswered questions, and trying to delve into and find out more about what makes people tick in terms of the paranormal world. And of course, things are so different here in the UK as they are in the United States and Canada. So being able to host a show that interviews many people from many walks of life who have different experiences in the paranormal, and take the show into paranormal investigations is thrilling. I just can't wait. Really exciting stuff.
Now, if I understand what Al said correctly, and when you and I spoke a little while ago, you are going to probably be the first successful one that I've heard of. You're going to be doing investigations live on the radio, or did I misunderstand?
No, that's true. What we hope to do is we have a wonderful paranormal event listed in December, and it's a very popular and historic venue in Port Talbot, which is in South Wales in the UK. And it's a huge mansion house, Gothic in appearance, that has been through a family for many, many generations until the family could no longer upkeep, pay for the upkeep of the place. It is huge investment. And so they sold it to the local authority, and now that authority, they use it for film sets and for paranormal investigations. There's not really a lot more they can do with it because of the sheer cost of its upkeep. So we're going to investigate there. It's one of the very few venues that a paranormal group here called Parascience have investigated, and they can feel as though they have no explanation as to some of the activity. So many groups here who have a scientific basis to their paranormal group will say, well, that's clearly not paranormal because of all these reasons, but this is a very well acclaimed group, and they are saying, actually, this is the one venue that we cannot explain everything that's going on. So we've had some amazing experiences. We've had things thrown at us, we've had voices, we've had people being pushed over, people being pushed on the stairs. We've had people being taken over seemingly by spirit and becoming aggressive towards myself. Just amazing experiences, things caught on camera. So we can't wait to go back there and put that out on the air as well.
Now, you said something caught on camera. Julie, you can't bring me to this corner to drop me off. What was caught on camera?
We've had stones being thrown caught on camera. We've had objects being moved, and they've been kept in a room with a locked room with a locked off camera, and then that object being moved. We've had lights on and off caught on camera. When we investigate, we only have a very few amount of people with us, because we believe that in order to host a positive and effective paranormal investigation, you have to know where every member of your crew is at any given time. Because anything caught on camera or on the sound box, you need to be sure that you know where people are and that they've not influenced that in any way. And if they have, you just kind of put your hands up and say, absolutely, that's what's happened. So it's really important to us that we evidence that, and so that's what we've been doing. So all the things that we've caught on camera have always been where there has been no crew members around at all, and we can evidence that because we can evidence them being in a different place with another camera, or they've recorded that in a different way somewhere else in the building.
You hit on something key, and I'm already inspired. You're absolutely right. Probably the best piece of video evidence that I've ever gotten. I was able to validate it. I was not able to recreate it, but the way that I was able to validate it is all of our team and all the investigators and cameramen were all in the basement. This was caught by our static cameras, and it was two shadow figures crossing across in front of the camera, but at a distance. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
They blocked out the light during their trip, and we were not able to replicate it.
I think it's crucial we know where people are. I am so disheartened in a world of growing interest in the paranormal. In the UK, we have thousands upon thousands of paranormal investigation groups popping up every week, and for me, it's a real disappointment when you see on mediums like Facebook, etc., a paranormal group offering tickets to an event where there may be then 40 tickets sold. Now, there is no way in this world you could possibly call that a paranormal event that would ever collate any evidence. So you have to question, what do people get from those things, and what do they really believe is happening in front of them? Because there's another 39 people there that could be making that noise. So I think it's quite sad that people can charge sort of up to £75 here in the UK for people to attend an event that there is no way you could validate at all any activity that you capture in any way.
Now, Al kind of explained that your show and his new show that's coming up is going to be more educational as well as entertainment. Are you going to kind of educate the listeners on these type of crucial details?
Definitely. I think there is a moral responsibility, isn't there? When, for me, my paranormal investigation group is a not-for-profit. We don't charge tickets in inverted commas to go and see an event. We would be looking at a select group of people to go in and investigate, and each person would have their role. I think that in order to support the development of investigation into the paranormal world, we need to take responsibility, and we need to be saying to people, well, these are some of the theories behind what we do, and these are some of the theories against that. It's really important. I'm a medium, but there are lots of other people out there that aren't mediums, and that's okay. It's really appropriate to be investigating in a scientific way and trying to find evidence. Being a medium is part of that investigation. It is not the only part.
Now, that is, you also touched on something else. You recently did a charity event, from what I understand.
Yes, this weekend I did weekend just gone, I did an event to raise money for a bone tumour service for cancer charity in the local, well, it's not that local to me actually, it's probably a 5-hour drive, but in a small town. I'd given a reading about 4 or 5 years ago now on a stage event in Ludlow in the UK, and I gave a reading to this chap in the audience, and after I'd done that, he said, well, can you give me a private reading? So I did. He then asked me to do a charity event for him, and I did that. And then everything went quiet for a couple of years, and then he made contact with me again and said, can you pick up anything that's happened to me since we last spoke? And I had this huge pain in my head, and I said, well, I know you're not with your previous partner. I know there's been some real tragedy, and I keep getting this pain in my head. And as it turned out, he had ended the relationship with a partner that when I first met him, and he'd met his absolute soulmate in spring of last year.
Wow, because you brought up social responsibility, and I was aware that you had done charity events. What is your feeling on groups like ours and like yours getting more involved socially, so people don't think, it's not so pretentious? Does that make sense? Uh-oh.
Oh, did you lose her?
Yeah, she popped off the air. I guess I bored her. Well, anyways, we were talking. I guess I will just simply be patient, and while Skype attempts to bring her back, because we're still broadcasting.
We're live. Hi, I'm Molly.
Oh, that sucks, because I've been introducing you as Al all night long.
Oh no, Al. He's home with a migraine.
Oh, well.
So yeah, no. Well, there you go. I was going to say, we've had some real interesting. The few times that we've co-hosted on a show, weird things have happened.
It's almost as if Spirit doesn't want us together. So I am attempting to bring her back. Pardon the pun.
Bring her back from the.
Yeah, it's those damn transatlantic lines.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let me check over here. Okay, nope, I have not heard from her yet.
Well, no, I was actually not talking so much about you and me, but when I was co-hosting with her, when we did The Witch of Salem, we had all these weird things happen to us.
Such as? I mean, you can't just say that, Hal, without explaining.
Well, because The Witch of Salem was, she's the one that says that she'll put bad spells on people. She has no problem, because typically the witches are, no harm. right, onto people. But
Right.
she was sort of a different sort of breed. And it was real interesting because we had all these things, like I think Julie lost a computer, totally crashed. My washer and dryer both went down, and the washer flooded out a whole room.
Holy crap.
Yeah, it was just
so
crazy.
So you brought it home, or you brought the curse home?
Just talking to her. So be careful.
Well, would that qualify as an attachment?
You know, I don't know. I don't. To her, she was she would do spells. Like what she's saying is, the Witch of Salem, there, Crystal Madison. What she would say was, if she's gone out to a store and she's waiting in a line, or if she's doing something and someone looks at her the wrong way or not very nicely, she would put a spell on them.
Hi, sorry about that. The whole of the internet here is just completely dropped.
Yeah, well, I was just rattling on, and next thing I know, you got really quiet.
I was telling him about when we interviewed the Witch of Salem.
Oh yes, yeah, interesting.
And,
yeah.
And you lost a computer in the deal.
Yeah, well, and this time the whole of the internet went out for the whole house. So I don't quite know what that was about, but we're back on. We've actually had to change the whole modem box and everything to get it back working. So.
Well, you keep that stuff over there with you. I'm on a budget.
Yeah, well, I'll give it a go.
Al has just recently bought a couple of new computers himself, so I'm actually doing pretty well.
Oh, good. I won't try and influence it.
You keep that stuff over there.
Apologies for that.
No apologies. I thought you just got bored and said, screw this, I'm going to bed.
I thought about it, but then I thought, no, hang on in there.
Yeah, stick it out. I promise I'll get better.
It's not too bad. It's not too bad.
Yeah, it'd be even
better.
better.
Where were we?
Well, we were talking about, do groups have a social responsibility to help the societies in which they live and investigate in, so that it's not so pretentious. Yeah. It's not just for fame and personal gain. What can we do for society?
I absolutely believe they do, and I think that is such it's in such a short supply, really, moral responsibility in terms of paranormal investigating. Many groups are out for fame, are on the back of programs like Most Haunted, which very, very successful, very good program, and things like Haunted Australia. I don't know, TAPS, all many programs are out there, and they've all got good and bad points, I'm sure, and it's not for me to comment on any of them. I suppose the problem is when smaller groups feel that they can go and replicate the work of what is commonly entertainment, and then they feel as if they're giving something to the public that is more than what they really are. So they feel that they're giving a true account of paranormal investigating, when in reality they are almost giving a show. And they're paying astronomical prices, people, to attend these events. Now, that's twofold, because here in the UK, for example, the event that we're going to be doing at Margam Castle, to hire Margam Castle is £600 for the evening. That's a lot of money.
Yes.
And so those smaller groups have to charge, because they have to be able to pay the fees for the venues. So you have a group of many investigators who are out there, and they are getting events, and they're trying to make ends meet financially by charging very high prices for their tickets for what is in effect an entertainment evening. And then you've got a small select group of people who are really wanting to inform and educate the public and be able to do good. So i.e. go into houses, investigate private houses as well as the bigger public events, and try and help people to understand the paranormal world as they see it, or to rule out a haunting. So this may not be paranormal, it could well be something to do with the environment. So there is a moral responsibility there not to jump to the conclusion that every noise that happens in our house is a ghost.
Yes, I can see that. That well, let me ask you this. Then that brings me to another point. Is I would see what you do as a medium as part of that social responsibility. You can either tell them that they have something or that they don't, or as you have said, you can kind of give them relief. Or am I misunderstanding you, Julie?
No, not at all. I think for me, if somebody goes to see a medium, it's usually at the time of trauma, or they are really struggling to come to terms with loss. They may be at a particularly low point in their life. There are not many people that go to see a medium because they're happy as Larry and they've got not a problem in the world. And I think that has to be your starting point. There is a moral responsibility with the information you give and understanding where somebody is at any given time. A few years ago now, I worked on Psychic TV on their telephone lines, and I wanted to get a feel for what that was like in that kind of commercial world. Oh, and I found it really hard because people were ringing in and asking some real, what I would call absolutely daft questions that you would never go to a medium for. So my husband left me 6 months ago. I've now found out that he wants to marry another person. Is he coming back to me in the next month?
Oh, that's what you mean, because you had me for a second.
So clearly that sort of question coming to you is crazy, because you're morally you're going to be saying, look, come on, he's gone off with somebody else, he's with somebody else, he's been away for 6 months, he's looking at marrying that person, he's not coming back to you. But you don't need to charge somebody £40 to give them that information. That's common sense. That's about being socially responsible. The only information I will ever give somebody comes direct from spirit. So I think you have to be very, very careful when you're speaking to people who have clearly got loss and trauma, to know exactly how to put information, what information to give, and actually whether or not they should be seeking the advice of a medium in that moment. Does that make sense?
It does. But if I can put another aspect on that, maybe they were asking such bizarre questions. Like, for example, your example, well, why would you want this man back after this? You know, why would you? But
that may be my view, but it's not for me to give that view, is it?
No, and I'm leading into you doing the right thing and being morally responsible. If they're asking questions like that, Julie, and Al, chime in on this. If they're asking questions like that, they're not in their right mind, and they are in a dark place in their life to where they would ask questions like that. So perhaps it is kind of fitting that they're coming to you, somebody that doesn't have all the conventional answers. Am I making sense?
Absolutely, but there's a difference between being a counsellor and a medium. And I think you've got to be really careful, because people are coming to you because they want advice from spirit. If you are then giving advice, as myself, for example, if I was then giving advice because I know that to be the right thing to do, that's the right pathway for them because I'm sensible and I can see things with a clear head or an independent view, then they're not getting the services of a medium. They're getting the services of a counsellor or an independent person, a friend. And that's a very different responsibility. So I think it's okay to say those things if you kind of step out of the mediumship role and you say, listen, this isn't about the medium, this isn't about spirit, this is just about me thinking, what are you doing here? Why are you following that path? Why are you not, self-respecting a little bit more? Why are you making those decisions that are affecting your life so badly? Why are you always unhappy? I could ask those questions, but I would never be asking that as a medium, because that's not the service that a medium would supply.
Touche. Touche.
Yeah,
what do you think, Al? Do you agree?
Well, yeah, totally. And I think that's where some people get mixed up between what they like when they go to see a medium. They're thinking of psychic. They're thinking of fortune teller or something. There's a slight difference. Like, should I marry this man, or I'm seeing this guy, is he going to be good for me and stuff? It gets into that category, and I understand. For me, I think I couldn't do it. I think I would be too honest and tell them that they're, that would bother me. And I know what you're saying. And if you're being paid for it, then it's turning the whole mediumship into something that's, it's really not serving its purpose.
There is a saying that all mediums are psychic, but not all psychics are mediums, and I think that's really true. I can quite often from spirit start to understand somebody's journey going forward and give advice on that. But I think when I'm not getting that information from spirit and I'm just kind of giving my own personal view, that's where it becomes really tricky. And that's where you have to kind of take a step back. And no matter how much you want to be able to say, look, come on, get a grip, move on. This is not right for you. This person's not okay for you. Morally, that's not my role and it's not my place, because I'm giving somebody an opinion formed on my own values. And it's not for me to inflict my values on somebody else. So when I worked on Psychic TV, people would ring in and spend £30 for 20 minutes, and those are the type of questions they would ask. And I found myself falling into a real moral responsibility, saying, well, should I be even answering these questions? Because this person is spending £30 just to be on the phone to me for 19 minutes.
What would you say to them?
Well, I would answer anything from a mediumship point of view. So when spirit gave me information, I would give them that. And if that was the only piece of information, I would tell them to hang up and save their pennies, because actually it's not for me to give advice outside of that. And if they wanted then to ring in and get advice from another medium, that was up to them. But I wouldn't be giving them any information under false pretenses. To me, my earnings are irrelevant when it comes to being morally responsible. I've got a real value of being morally responsible, and I won't do anything otherwise. I left Psychic TV and I was offered 3 shifts per week on air on the television, and I turned it down. It's not about fame and fortune, it's about moral responsibility.
That is great, and I am so glad to hear you say that. It kind of restores my faith in all of this. Because so many people fall into that trap. I'm not even talking about the counseling. I'm talking about just, hey, pay me the money. And I feel that all of them start off genuine at some point. And either they fall, they become a prostitute to the money. And I say that. I make no apologies for it. Or they fall prey to, just getting mixed up and falling, like you said, into the counselor role and just completely wasting everything. It becomes a waste. And so
it's really nice, isn't it, to be recognised and respected for your role in whatever field you're in. So whether that be as a radio host, whether that be as an actor or a medium, or it doesn't matter. Whatever your role is, a social worker, I social work in the day, and I think it doesn't matter what your role is, you'd like to be felt highly of in that role. But there's a crossover of being respected and thought highly of and doing a good job, and a moral obligation where you're just seeking the fame and fortune and the royalties that come from it. That's not where I'm at.
But God has given us a divine mission with these gifts. And if you pollute it with all of that, God can't continue to bless that. And you will fall victim. You will fail.
Definitely. And I think that there's also with that a huge respect of different people's beliefs. And I was at home the other day and we had a Jehovah's Witness call on the door. And I'm not adverse to that, each to their own. And everybody has, I believe, in whatever belief or religion they have a mission to pass that information on to people in the same way as we are doing now. They just do it in a different way. And the lady said to me, she started talking to me about her religion, and I said, look, I need to kind of just stop you there, because I'm a spiritualist and I need to tell you that out of respect. And she said, oh, thank you so much for answering the door. And I thought, why would I not answer the door? But then I realised that some people are so adverse and cannot hear other people's views, no matter how we feel about them. But it's about being human and accepting people's difference and really celebrating people's difference. I haven't got the same religion as that person had, but I would give her the 30 seconds that it needed to be polite and pleasant at the door. So I think there's something really important about us respecting each other, respecting each other's views. I stand in a congregation in a spiritualist church, and I will lead that service in terms of the mediumship. But I don't give the prayers at the beginning because I don't know where my religion really falls. So I won't be a hypocrite to that. I will say to people, I have a belief, this is my belief. I'm not sure what that means in terms of whether this falls into any one category or whether I would call it any one particular religion. This is what I do, this is what I make of it, and this is who I am. I'm not going to lead you into prayer because I'm not sure of what that means to me yet. And people respect that view much more highly than if I stood there and did everything that they wanted me to do in terms of a church service just because my role as a medium would dictate that.
That is important. That is an important point. And if you don't mind talking about it, since we're on this venue, how did you grow up? How did your spiritual beliefs lend to operating as a medium?
When I was a very young girl, I used to see a black cat in my peripheral vision, and I would look at this cat and the cat would disappear. So it would always kind of be at one side, and I would turn my head, the cat would go. I would say to my mum, I've seen the cat, and she would spend countless hours looking for this cat. As I grew older, I used to see the cat when I was out and about. If I was out late at night, the cat would be there. And I think that was probably around times in my life where I felt most anxious or worried. So as I then got into my 20s, the cat became less visible to me, and I suppose I moved on with life in a different way. I had a young family, I had married, then I went into university, so I was focusing on different things. And somebody said to me when I was a young mum, every time a spirit enters the house, you'll see the light bulb move. Well, that terrified me, absolutely terrified me, because of course that's a load of rubbish. But for a young mum living on their own, I would constantly be looking at this light bulb thinking, oh my word, if that moves, I'm doomed. And it was a huge fear. It was massive because I was so vulnerable. So when, I suppose in my early 30s, I was having a conversation with somebody, and it was a really normal conversation about running the marathon. I was looking at developing a training plan, and this person was a trainer. I didn't know him very well. We were just having a conversation about getting fit. And he was just wrapping up the conversation, and I said to him, I just need to tell you something about this picture I can see in my mind. Now, I had no idea how this picture had come into my head, why it had come into my head, and I just felt really stupid telling him. But I thought, I've got to do it. I knew I had to do it, and I was compelled to describe this picture, so I just did. I went out on a bit of a limb, and I did. And I thought, he's either going to feel as if I've got a really severe mental health problem, or he will run with this, and we'll see where it goes. So anyway, he ran with it. 3 hours later, I was in tears, he was in pieces, because I had given him such specific information, neither of us could really understand what was going on. I'd mentioned his siblings, their dates of birth, where they were born, where he'd been to school, details about scars that he had endured, details about his family life as he grew up, that his partner had a miscarriage, was his first partner, but even his current wife didn't know that. There was so much information that I'd given that was just astounding to both of us. And the next day I woke up and I just knew that was mediumship. There was never a question about it. Now, bearing in mind that at that time shortly after that actually, I was doing a parapsychology course with Al, an online parapsychology course with Dr. Kieran O'Keefe. And that was really looking at the scientific evidence behind paranormal investigation, that my mediumship couldn't have been any stronger at that point. And I think that was probably a real trigger, actually, where Spirit kind of said, you're ready for this? You've been skeptical for far too long. This is where you're heading. And I was given the information that I needed at that time. Very powerful, incredibly powerful. And really, even to this day, looking back, I'm amazed that the information came to me as it did. It was very special.
So, you just you took that chance, that one infinitesimal moment in time.
Yeah.
I know this is going to sound like a really, really stupid question, Julie, but how scared were you? Because I know that feeling. They're either going to think I'm the most brilliant person on earth or the craziest person on earth.
Well, it was incredibly scary, and at the time, I was married to my ex-husband, because then he thought I was mentally unwell and wanted me incarcerated. Yeah, huge step, really. I don't mean how I felt about it. I mean, in that moment, I just knew I had to do it. There was no other option. It was something that was in my head. It was so strong. I had to just take that leap. And as I said, after 3 hours, it was, wow, what's just gone on there? And when I woke up, I just knew there was no question about it. And I rang him that morning and I said, I'm so sorry. I said, because I don't really understand what's just happened. But all I can think of is that I'm a medium. And I said, why have you changed your wedding ring onto your other hand? And he said, well, I was doing the washing up this morning and it was a bit big, so it was slipping off. So I changed it and put it on the other hand. How do you know that? And I said, and I just laughed and I said, I don't know, but this is quite good fun.
And it is,
and
isn't it?
then, of course, I played on it then, because, of course, then you can have such fun. So I would message while he was on a training course and say, oh, you know the woman who sat next to you in the pink and white shirt? And he would like, you need to leave this alone now. Go away, go away. And I would say, oh, your alarm clock's on your right-hand side of your bed and it's blue and silver. And he would be like, now, out the bedroom, get out of my bedroom. So we would have quite a giggle with it. But of course, there's this real serious side, and there's a time when you have to buckle down and say, actually, I haven't been given this gift because I can have fun with it. I've been given this gift because I can enhance people's lives with it. So then you take the next step, and I had a first kind of public event where we hired out a village hall, and about 60 people came, and I just stood up there with no script whatsoever and said, this is what I do, this is how I read, and this is what I'm going to give to you today. And it was a roaring success. And I knew then that I could just continue to do that.
Yeah, me and Al was talking off air a little bit. And Al, you can chime in on this.
Chime?
Chime. We were talking about doing group events. I personally have never done one. But you guys kind of tell me what it's like. I was telling Al, it's difficult sometimes to do even a one-on-one reading because you're getting these messages and you don't know what they mean. Sometimes it's just bizarre statements. But that has got to be overwhelming when you're working with a whole crowd. How do you do it? And then I want Al to kind of talk a little bit about, like he shared with me, for the listeners.
I think that in time, I mean, certainly over the first year or two of being on stage doing events, Spirit would test me in many ways to give me different indications of how I would read on that particular night. So I might walk on stage and some people look like they've been greyed out a little bit. They're slightly darker in colour than anybody else. Or I might get first names of people all evening and they will relate to people on the floor. And then another evening I would get a load of names and they relate to people in spirit. So it's really hard to differentiate when spirit are testing you like that and they're trying to give you more and more ways of picking up information. And one of the most complex ways I had was stood in front of a spiritualist congregation. And I don't know if you're familiar with the British cartoon Postman Pat. But it's basically a kids program that has a little post van, and Postman Pat lives in this very tiny village with his black and white cat Jess, and it's really a program for under fives. And I kept seeing the Postman Pat van, I kept seeing Postman Pat, and I couldn't relate this to anybody in the audience. And with the greatest respect for anybody older than 50, this whole congregation was right up there. So none of them could link to this cartoon at all. And I asked Spirit in my head, could you make the link? Because this is mad, I can't do this. I'm looking stupid stood here. And I saw an image of me opening up a British gas spill, which is in one of our fuel suppliers here. So I said, who's opened a British gas spill this morning? And this gentleman in the congregation said, oh, that's me. And I said, well, what was significant about British gas? And he said, I don't get British gas. I said, right, who's Pat? He said, oh, that's my son next to me. So I had the post, I had a man, and I had Pat, postman Pat. But the way that had come through was so complex. I left that congregation thinking, if Spirit keep doing that to me, I'm off. I can't keep doing this. This is a crazy way of identifying information. I've just had a couple of years break from doing stage events, and I went back on stage on Saturday, and actually I found that really quite tricky to differentiate what parts of the readings were for each person. So that's something that I know I need to get better at again, because I was up there and it was very easy at one point, but that's practice. That's very much practice and working closely with Spirit to know where they want you to go. So that's something that I do need to be very careful about going forward. What about yourself, Al?
Yeah, it's much the same, and you have to be careful sometimes, because when you get the message or you get the image in your head, you'll say it, and you try to analyze it sometimes, and you can't.
Absolutely.
There's a fine line. Like when the last one I was at with the group, I kept on getting a man that had been crashed. It was a very severe. It was a shock, quick, and
Yeah.
it was an accident. So it was one of those. He was killed quickly, but he was there, and he was giving me that there was no emotion, but he was. You kind of get drawn to people. Like you're standing and you kind of walk, and I walked, and there was a woman and a daughter, and I was just like drawn to them, and it was like, and I said that a few times, because if I was to think about it, I would not necessarily get the message across. So I even said, this is to you, to the lady, and I said, well, but this has, there's actually no emotion there. He's here, and she was like, yeah, it's my husband, and I'm over him.
Oh wow!
And he died in a car accident. It was just like, but so what I'm saying is, it's not the way you think it would be. So if you try to analyze it and try to put it in a frame of
Definitely.
how you think it, you're not going to do it right. So he was there for the daughter. He was there for a connection to the daughter, and that was a really weird thing. But you can't let that. You just got to let it draw you to where you need to be. That's the best way I can say it.
I describe it to my audiences like information comes into me as a thought, and I have to differentiate whether that's my thought or that of Spirit. So if I try and put my own views or my own thoughts around it to make sense of it, I will get it wrong. So I can only give what I have, and sometimes that sounds really odd. So at the weekend I was on stage talking to a gentleman about a traumatic passing of someone close to him, and I said, unusually I have to give you 2 sets of flowers, whereas I tend to be told 1 set of flowers, and that colour of those flowers means something. I said, but I'm being given red roses for love, but I'm also being given a whole bunch of gladioli, and I don't know what that means. And he burst into laughter, and he said at the weekend, he said, I went and I put gladioli on this person's grave, and when I went back home, my wife said, what did you do that for? She hated gladioli. And so I'd just mentioned this gladioli, and so that was his validation that this person had come through for him. Very powerful, but if I'd have tried to make sense of those flowers myself, it wouldn't have worked. I just had to tell him, I don't understand it, but these are the flowers.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I don't know what this means, but here is the message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes people can't take it there and then, can they? They have to go home and process it and think about it and put it into the right context, or it might happen the next day. It doesn't, just because people can't take it there and then doesn't mean to say it's not the right message. I will still maintain that message.
Well, they don't always want to hear it. It's not always what they're expecting.
That's true.
Oh boy, yes. And that can kind of shake me sometimes. Because you'll be doing a whole reading, and they're like, yes, 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 and then you put that one statement out there. They're like, no, that's not right at all. And then I'm like, uh-oh, like you just said, Julie, is that me or is that the spirit? Did I just jump in? But sometimes I'll tell this real quick little story because and then we'll go to our news break. This paid off in spades for me one time, and it is probably one of the funniest things that ever happened on an investigation. We were investigating a historic home here in Athens, Alabama. And it is a home where Union forces during the occupation surrounded this house. And they actually barracked themselves in the house with this Southern family. And I kept getting this message: there's poop in the food. There's poop in the food. And I'm like sitting there thinking, I can't say that. That's strange. That's bizarre. I can't do that. And finally, I just got so insistent. I was like, okay, I don't know what this means, but this woman is telling me that there's poop in the food. And she started laughing and told me this historic story. The Union set up their buffet tables when they were feeding their troops right below the windows. And they would also play their music really loud, and her daughters were sick. And she asked them, would you please stop playing so loud? Can you, my daughters are ill, they need their rest. And this Union officer told her, well, if they're sick, then they can go meet their maker listening to Northern music. Well, when nobody was looking, she was in the upstairs, and she took the chamber pot and dumped it over the food buffet out the window. And the troops, there was literally poop in the food. So that paid off well for me. Okay, I don't know what this means, but I'm going to step out in faith and just put it out there.
And that's all you can do, isn't it? You just have to say the words.
Yeah, and thank God it was not me, it was spirit. Well, sure. Everybody, with that in mind, we're going to go to our next news break, and we'll be joined on the other side. Pardon the pun, guys, sorry. I just realized what I just said. But we'll be joined by Al Warren and Julie Saville. Everybody, just stick with us. We'll be right back.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Speer. The latest batch of Hillary Clinton's emails from her time as Secretary of State contains information the government now considers classified. NPR's Sarah McCammon has more on the 7,000 pages of emails expected out later this evening.
This is the largest group of emails so far since May, when the State Department began court-ordered monthly releases of Hillary Clinton's messages in response to a public records request. Department spokesman Mark Toner says government officials recently reviewed the messages and deemed about 150 confidential.
We stand by our contention that, the information we've upgraded was not marked classified at the time that the emails were sent.
Clinton used a private email server while she was Secretary of State. Late last year, she gave the State Department 55,000 pages of emails she deemed work-related. Sarah McCammon, NPR News, Washington.
Rain coupled with slightly cooler weather is giving firefighters in the West some much-needed help. Bernie Poneta is a fire spokesman and says while rain that fell Sunday did not even reach the floor of the burning forest, it did raise the humidity levels, helping firefighters in clearing the smoky air.
We got about 1/10 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch of rain. And in firefighting business, we will take every drop of rain possible that's given to us, and we are going to take advantage of that.
In Washington State, the so-called North Star complex of wildfires stood at just over 300 square miles and was slightly less than 1/4 contained. The largest wildfire in the state's history, the Okanagan complex, is now about 30% contained. Oil prices finished sharply higher today for a third day in a row. NPR's Jim Zarroli reports the surge occurred after the government reported oil production has been weaker than previously believed.
Prices rose almost 9% on the New York market, reaching $49.20 a barrel. That's a big increase since last week when oil briefly dipped below $40. Prices are up 27% in 3 days, the biggest increase since the 1990 invasion of Kuwait by Iraq. This latest increase occurred after the U.S. Energy Administration released a report saying oil production has been lower than estimated this year. With prices at 6-year lows, oil producers have been cutting back. Meanwhile, OPEC has dropped hints that it may stop resisting production cuts, and Russia said it may take unspecified steps to stabilize prices. Jim Zarroli, NPR News, New York.
Hurricane Fred has formed in the waters of the eastern Atlantic, even as Tropical Storm Erica brought flooding to some parts of the south today. Erica dissipated over Cuba over the weekend after killing at least 20 people. In the outlying suburbs of Charleston, South Carolina, some residents were reporting heavy flooding today. As of 9:30 this morning, more than 6 inches of rain had fallen there. U.S. financial markets starting the week on a down note. The Dow dropped 114 points today. You're listening to NPR. It took a 7-man, 5-woman jury less than 2 hours to convict a self-proclaimed white supremacist in the shooting deaths of 3 people, including a teenage boy who killed outside 2 Jewish centers in Kansas last year. Jurors ruling the 74-year-old Frazier Glenn Cross was guilty of the 3 murders, as well as 3 counts of attempted murder during the same 2014 shooting spree. Cross, who acted as his own attorney at the trial, admitted to the killing, saying was motivated by his hatred of Jews. None of those killed in the attack were Jewish. Health officials in Sierra Leone have confirmed 1 Ebola death in less than a week after the last known patient with the virus was discharged from a treatment center. NPR's Afebi Kestarkton reports the West African nation had begun the countdown to being declared Ebola-free.
News that a 67-year-old woman recently died from Ebola in northern Sierra Leone has come as a blow. The chief medical officer there says samples from her body confirmed positive for the virus. Sierra Leone is trying to determine whether the woman died before or after the countdown to 0 cases of Ebola began a week ago. It would take 42 days with no new infections for the World Health Organization to declare Sierra Leone free of Ebola transmission. Tracing teams have been dispatched to track down people who came into contact with the woman in Cambia district in the north. Afebi Kestarkton, NPR News, Accra.
Crude oil futures prices rose in New York. Oil was up $3.98 a barrel today to end the session at $49.20 a barrel on the New York Mercantile Exchange. I'm Jack Spear, NPR News in Washington.
Everybody, we are back. You are listening to The Buzz on ztalkradio.com. And joining us for about the next 25 to 30 minutes, we're back with Julie. So Julie, we were talking a little bit off air, and it got me again, got me all inspired. I'm all full of questions. So you were talking about stepping out on faith and just kind of saying what Spirit puts out there. What do we do? And this is a question that was actually sent to me over Facebook from one of the listeners. What do we do if we're wrong and your client begins to start to lose? You know, what do you do if you're wrong and you start to lose a client?
Wow. I guess there's two parts to that. So if you're wrong in that moment and your client starts to think, well, actually this is a bit of a, this is rubbish, therefore I'm going, or there is that kind of longer term relationship with somebody who then they feel that they can't come to you anymore. There's two things there. I don't believe the information I give is ever wrong. It's about how we interpret the information, and I may have misinterpreted that, or they may have done. So I'm perfectly happy to sit down with somebody and say, right, okay, let's revisit that and see what that might mean, because I can only give the words that I'm getting. So if I give that information, I know that that information is meaningful to that person, but I don't always know the context. So then it's about helping that person to translate that into their lives. Now that doesn't mean changing the meaning of it so that it does make sense to somebody, because I think that if you again, with that moral responsibility, you have to be very careful that because people want to hear from Spirit, you don't say, oh, I'm getting the initial J, and they say, could it be an L? And you go, yeah, that's it. Because they will make that leap and believe it. And that's really inappropriate. So we need to be really clear that this is the information I've got. I don't know the context. I have to leave that with you. Let's look at something else. But if they want to move on, then they move on. Somebody's got to be incredibly comfortable with the medium that they choose. I don't believe in just going out, getting a local person or the cheapest person out there. You find someone that you have that link with and that you trust, and you can work through those things together.
But isn't that kind of a difficult thing to do? For example, I am the medium for my group, for my ghost hunter group. And I can kind of relate to your information. You're a medium with your group.
Yeah.
So the client, whenever they ask the group to come and do an investigation, they don't necessarily get to pick the medium. You're a functioning part of that group.
You're thinking it in terms of a bigger group, aren't you? In terms of paranormal investigation as opposed to a stage event. Because if I'm on stage, I advertise it and people book on to see me. And if I have a private client, they will book in to see me as a person, as opposed to another several hundred people out there. They will choose to come to me. So on a paranormal group, that's slightly different, because you have one medium leading the group usually, or at least one medium within that group. And so the information that you're sharing is, there is nowhere else to go in that moment. There isn't another medium there 9 times out of 10. Is that what you're meaning, Kevin?
Yes, but you do make a good point. People book specially just to see Julie if it's a private reading, which leads me to another question, and I'll get to that one in just a moment. But whenever, perfect example, this weekend we went out Saturday night, did an investigation of a local business.
Yeah.
I don't normally start just chatting for the Spirit right up front. I don't walk in the door and say, boom, here I am, Mr. Medium, Ghost is saying this, Spirit's saying that, I'm getting this, getting that. I'll let the client actually warm up to me while I get a feel, and then I start sorting it out. Is this Kevin, or is this, the Spirit? Is this Kevin? Is this Spirit? But they don't get to pick me. I'm part of the group that they have invited. How do they build that relationship with me?
You're giving information on a paranormal investigation about the residual energy with those active energies that are passing through that particular building, because you're investigating the building. You're not giving information specifically to that person. And if information does come through, I suppose at the beginning of an investigation, you would be saying, if something comes through that you can take on a personal level, you can either tell me to stop, or you can ask me afterwards more about that. But just own the information. because actually they're going to see or experience a paranormal investigation considering the medium's views, the scientific views, their own observation. So you're just one part of all of that. And it shouldn't, from my perspective, it shouldn't be depicted in any other way. The medium that they're with is just one person. And what I do at the beginning of my investigations, where I've got members of the public, is I will go around before the public get there and do like a mini visual. So we go around with a camcorder, and I will then talk to the camcorder about what I'm picking up and where. We will then, separately from that, take the group round and let the group tell me and the rest of the crew what they're picking up and where. Mm-hmm. So a lot of those people are not going to be psychic, they're not going to be mediums, they're not going to be people who feel that they're particularly sensitive, but they want to experience that. So open up your senses, really just think about where you are, get a feel for where you are, and write down what it is you're feeling at every step of this journey. We then go back into a room and I play them my recorded film. And it's amazing at how many people will have got the same feelings, maybe not the detail, but they're the same feelings in certain places, the same places. So straight away there is a kinship. People are saying, actually, yep, she got that and I got that. I'm starting to understand a little bit about that world. So the relationship starts at that point.
That's a good idea. I've only done half of that equation. That is an excellent idea.
It's a way of somebody experiencing it without being led by a medium as well. So I'm not putting my views onto those people. They are already having their own experience without any influence from myself. As we know, in a paranormal investigation, much of what we find out is about power of suggestion. So many mediums on television have been exposed because something has been suggested to them offset, and then they go on, they do the investigation, and that piece of information comes out, and they're exposed that way. I don't necessarily agree that that is fraud, but I would say that, you know, when we have information and it's in our psyche somewhere, we may well come out with that subconsciously. We may not know where we've heard it before, and then we may mistake it as being spirit. However, I think it's a really good way of saying to people, you can investigate without being led to a conclusion by myself. I can validate that because I've already been around the building, but actually I'm not going to lead you. And it says straight away, you can trust me because I don't want to lead you in this investigation. I want you to experience this for yourself.
You know, that is awesome advice, and I'm actually going to incorporate that, because I usually do go in and do a simple preliminary, you know,
Yeah.
just kind of speak with the client, get a feel for the location, tell them what I'm experiencing up front. But like this weekend, I had done that, and it turned into a miniature reading because I was up against the clock. And then by the time I got here, or I showed up Saturday with the team, break out the cameras, blah blah blah, the energy had completely changed.
Yeah.
What do you think happened?
I think there's what in the building.
Yes, I mean, it was almost like there was a different spirit talking.
I think every building is going to be really different, Kevin. So it's probably not something I could answer. I do know that when things change in a building, when you bring something into it or you take something out, then it can really affect that kind of equilibrium. We've done Margam a few times, and every time I've been in, we've had a lot of activity. A film set went in, and they changed the kind of, not the layout of the interior, but certainly they put false walls up with it was a set basically, so they put all these walls up, and it was a really quiet night, and it was almost as if it was a lull before the storm. There was just something not quite right. It all felt very anxious, and then we went back in when that had gone, and the activity was back and very vibrant again. So I think that the environmental factors of things going in and out can affect it. I think people in there can affect it. We've had some quite difficult experiences in that particular venue because spirit feel that I look like a sister that was the sister of the person that was murdered there. So I get quite a lot of negative attention when I'm in there. I have to be quite strong with that. and put my boundaries up very clearly. So I think everything influences in its own way. So I can't really answer that in any clearer way, really. So sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine. Al, have you ever run into a situation like that where you do a preliminary, then you come back and everything has changed around?
Well, no, not so much, because up in Canada, the Canadian Paranormal Group always does the preliminary. They don't allow me to. They always send for me. I go somewhere and I usually wait, and then they take me in. And so it's not so I'm not part of the group that does all the preliminary and the walkthroughs at the beginning or talks to the clients. If anything, they never tell me very much about any of the events going on. If anything, they just tell me what city I've got to be in and what weekend, and that's all I know.
Well, that's another good point, because then you're not front-loaded. You don't have the information up front.
Yeah. And in fact, some of the places, sometimes they've picked me up at the airport and we've gone. I've just been at the hotel, and then they come get me at just after dinner time, and so I have no idea. And sometimes they'll take me through for a day walk and they film it before the evening investigation, but I never get to talk to the clients or any of that sort of stuff. I'm not involved in that end, so it's how they want it. So
there's definitely strengths in that and weaknesses, aren't there? Because quite often we like clarity from people, or for them to clarify a point if it's for them. Or I don't know about you, Al, but if I'm going to a venue, I will quite often get information about that venue prior to me going. It will just start to seep in, and if people are going there, I may well get information about them that I won't know it's about them until I'm there. So if then suddenly I didn't have that communication with members of the public, then I think I would struggle with that a little bit.
Yeah.
Spirit, it's almost like a queuing system, isn't it? Spirit want you to give that information. If you're stood there with 10 people, they're going to want to pass some information on at some point.
Yeah. It's an unusual. That's sort of, they use me as a tool here because they think of a medium as just another piece of equipment.
Yeah.
And so that they have me do very little interaction until the event, and then even then, a lot of times I don't even know which of the team's going to be at the investigation. Quite often I don't.
I think if it's an investigation site I've done lots and lots of, then that it just wouldn't apply. I would just go down, because ultimately, if I give a reading, I very rarely remember much about the reading or the content, because it's not my memories. It's not something that I need to keep, and I think Spirit would stop me overloading with stuff. I think if it's somewhere for a different group, maybe who wanted that, I suppose, assurance that I'm not going to go researching something before, then clearly that's a really good way of doing it. For me, I could be told where I'm going a year in advance. It wouldn't make a difference. I wouldn't research it, because the only person I'd be kidding is myself.
Right.
I quite like the challenge of working with Spirit and being able to pick up that information and be able to give the names and the dates and things. I think that's my own personal challenge and it continues to evolve my mediumship. So there's no way in the world I would feel even interested in going Googling around and getting the information. But I can see how people would do it. I can see how there are mediums out there that are fraudulent, or who would try and make their lives a little bit easier and a little bit more infamous maybe, and research before they go.
Well, I think and up here we've got two main groups, right? There's the Canadian Paranormal, then there's TAPS, and TAPS won't use a medium or any sort of sensitive or anything like that. And so because the Canadian Paranormal Society does and TAPS doesn't, I think that they feel very defensive in a way. It's political in the sense that they use it because they believe in it, and TAPS doesn't. So but to protect themselves, they make sure that, because there's 3 of us that have worked for the group, they make sure that we're not involved in any of the pre-investigations when they decide. So they can sort of say, this is what we've got, this is what we got on film, this is our investigation, and they knew nothing about it. Like, they sort of, it's their defense to the TAPS group.
Yeah.
It's
but I mean, I've only seen a handful of TAPS work, but and certainly there's some of it, as I said earlier, that looks very good, and other bits that I would think, well, you can't evidence that, and it's not evidence. But there's you can say that with any group.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think there are references to spirits in TAPS work. It's certainly not all. This is evidence based, and if they see something on camera that they can't explain, well, that is paranormal. That is what paranormal means. So to not have a medium there, I think, is probably just another selling feature, really.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
because why would you cut out a piece of equipment, even if you look at it that way?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you're doing. It's like, well, I'm not going to do EVPs, or I'm not going to do a medium. I'm not going to. You're just cutting out, because all it is it's just a assimilation of all the evidence we can, and we try to put it together and decide on the evidence. But it's just another piece of the picture. So I don't know why to purposely cut out something. And that doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I can kind of see why, guys, because perhaps they're feeling that we as mediums were not as objective as a piece, as an Ovilus or a K2. We can, and we've talked about it tonight, we can be influenced, whereas a piece of mechanical equipment cannot.
Well,
so if we have a K2 meter in the middle of the room, and people haven't done their homework, or somebody walks past with a smartphone, that reading is influenced, and yet we don't see it in the same way.
Yes.
Every single piece of equipment we have can be influenced by a magnetic force or some force of nature. Say in exactly the same way as we can.
Well, we can also rule out a smartphone by duplicating it with a smartphone, or hey, who has the smartphone? Or you can use it to detect it. I'm just saying that we can be influenced by our own thoughts.
Right, but so are the investigators and the people that are analyzing the electrical equipment. So their preconceived ideas, and they influence. They put the spin on it from their own belief on it.
Yeah.
Right. Touche.
I mean, if you're standing in a group, let's say there's no, you're in an investigation, you're in a dark room, there's 2 or 3 of you in each room, and someone hears something, and if one person jumps and screams, and one person's, did you feel that? Did you hear that? Did you see that? That influences the other people in the room.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's a constant thing, that because we're human, we all have this human body and emotions and feelings and thoughts, and I think it can even be brought down to whoever's in the room. There's certain people, like you've got to find this, Kevin, because when you go on investigations, there's going to be certain people in your group that you work better with. And I don't mean that like you like them better or whatever, but you could be with certain people in the groups, and the energy that you have creates something different than if you're with someone else.
Oh yeah,
so I think,
absolutely.
I think it all comes across to the same thing.
That is a damn good point, Al. I mean, it's after 9. I can say damn. It's the family portion is over. Because I work really, really, really well with Molly. And I'm very, very, very comfortable with her there, so I will probably be a little bit more open, whereas some of the other members, perhaps not as much. I mean, we're a really close-knit group, but Molly is, my Molly.
Yeah.
So you do make a good point. I never really thought about it that way or put it in that context. But I'm not very good at devil's advocate, but I was just trying to make TAPS' case for them.
No, I understand TAPS' case too. That's great. I'm just saying that I think that it's every one of them on the TAPS, and even the TAPS here in Vancouver. I mean, I like all of them. They're all great, and they have their own way. But I think that just again, that puts them in a frame of mind and a set of emotions that when they go on an investigation, it affects the way they investigate. So they think having a medium in amongst the group will affect the way they investigate in a bad way.
Well, yeah.
Well, not bad as in you're bad, but then it's just they think it throws the investigation off. It influences them in a way that's not scientific.
Well, perhaps with a less reputable group, or as Julie, when I introduced Julie, we were talking about a balance in the groups. Perhaps it depends on the group, as if, do they need a medium or not, if it's going to throw off the balance of their group. Because some of them can just go, if they're not very reputable or not very practiced, they will become influenced and it will veer the investigation off. Simply, dare I say, due to their own incompetence. And so they probably, for the credibility purposes, they want to completely even eliminate that possibility for viewers who may want to do what they're doing. No.
Food for thought, isn't it?
Aha. Take that, you.
Al, you just lost.
No, there's no winners here.
Oh, we're all winners. Participation medals for everybody on the house.
Clearly, if you put somebody into an equation where you've got a mix of skeptics that are heading towards being believers, and you then put a medium into the equation, yes, there is a huge power of suggestion going on there, clearly, because somebody can just go straight in and you will influence that whole team. So I think for my team is very much, over the course of the years, people have become to be more of believers because of the information I've picked up, because of their experiences in the venues, but they always are taught to have that skepticism. And I will always say, anything that comes out of my mouth, you evidence, you try and find, you make sure that that can be evidence. Don't just take my word for it, cross-reference it, check it out. Make sure it's a valid part of the investigation, but it is not the be-all and end-all of the investigation. Go away and do your research and find the other bits that you need to find out. Because it's critical that you still have that degree of, but did that really just happen? What was that about? Who was there? What else could have caused that? You have to have that in every single situation. Doesn't matter what a medium is saying at the time.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I can.
When we do a private reading, we wouldn't just be, we'd be checking out with that person to make sure we're on track, we're okay, they're comfortable, they're taking something from the information we're giving. We wouldn't be saying to them, this is the information, now go and take that, and that's read, and that's it, off you go. We'd be asking them, if you can't understand this, go and check it out, get back hold of me, question me a little bit more, because I might be able to put some more flesh on the bones. Just keep checking in. If you don't understand it today, go back, ask those family members, and then come back to me. Because you wouldn't want just to say, this is the way it is, off you go. And you wouldn't do that in a paranormal investigation. You'd be saying, I need to test out this hypothesis. This is what we're thinking has just happened, but now we need the evidence around it.
And that's exactly what I do. And I'll do follow-ups. I do a 7-day follow-up, 2 weeks, and then as needed. And I get all of that on recording. And I'll go back and listen to it and take my little notes, and then ask the client, hey, remember when this happened? Does it make sense now? Or did you check in with that person? Or, did you talk to your relatives? Did this make sense? Because I get a lot of imagery.
Yeah.
Of stuff, from the past. Like you said, it's the spirit's memories, not mine. And, but the client will probably know what it's about. And they'll be like, nah, I'm not sure. Let me go talk to my sister because she was closer to her, and I'll see if that, if they remember that. And I follow up on that stuff.
Yes, it's about being personable, isn't it, and approachable, and you're not a charlatan. You're not somebody who's just going to go out and tell people this is the information you've got now. Thanks, put your money in my palm and off you go. It's more to that. This is a communication from spirit. We're very lucky to have that gift. So there's that responsibility, just to continue that relationship with that person until they're satisfied.
Well,
so who would you compare yourself to, Kevin, when you talk about, when we talk about giving readings? And I've been compared countless times to John Edward in the way that I receive information, the way I give information, my mannerisms, etc. on stage. Is there anyone that you relate to, or?
You caught me off guard with that one, and I went immediately to one of my more recent heroes. I'm going to pat myself on the back just a touch and say Amy Allen.
Right.
Because I recognize a lot of the things that she does, the facial features, except during the reveal. She disturbs me when she does those facial things during the reveal at the end.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm not that exaggerated, but during the readings, I know exactly what she's doing, what she's feeling, and how she's connecting. And I respond really well, and I sympathize with that.
We've got over here Psychic Sally. She's come under quite a lot of controversy, but she's incredibly well known. She absolutely sells out massive venues. Down to earth, very lovely down to earth woman, but she's been in the headlines a few times being accused of fraud.
Uh-oh.
But that happens. It happens, doesn't it?
Happens. Because even same as the Long Island medium in the States, it's the same.
Yeah.
Right? Oh,
yeah.
Al. Shame. You brought her up.
Well, it's the same sort of thing, right? I mean, it's, when they become that famous and that popular, it's going to be something they deal with no matter what.
Yeah, I have issue with her, so that's why the reaction, Julie.
Right.
Well, we've only got a couple of minutes left with you, Julie. How would somebody get in touch with you should they want to reach out to you?
I've got a Facebook page, which is probably the easiest way, which is Julie Saville Medium. I'm happy for anybody to contact me on that page, and I respond to them really quickly. So, ask me anything. If you want readings, etc., I can help with some of that. And that's probably the easiest way, really.
And don't forget, you've got a brand new show coming up next month.
I know. How exciting is that? I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it.
If it's anything like tonight, you've already got one listener, Julie.
That
would be me. So let's start with one.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. That's made my night.
Or what's left of it, right?
10 to 4 in the morning, UK time, for that one listener.
Oh, well, everybody.
And maybe one day I'll come back on and we'll do some readings together, and that would be fun.
Oh, now that would be awesome. I like to look and watch and learn how people do that. We've done readings here recently, started doing readings on air. Al, I think you was there when I did my first on-air reading.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, it was a little intense for me, a little nerve-wracking, because I like to do them one-on-one, but I took a deep breath, stepped in faith, and did it. So.
But can you connect people quite quickly, Kevin? Does spirit help you with that quite quickly, or is it something that you do prefer to have that physical energy?
I have learned here recently that there's not a lot of difference. I plug in over the air rather quickly. And, it was really, literally, the first time I'd ever really done it, with that intention. Hey, listeners.
And do you have guides? Do you have guides that are with you all the time, or? Sorry, it's me asking loads of questions now, but I'm just interested.
No. of recently, I've always known of one guide. My entire life, I've always known of one that has seemed to have stuck with me. But here recently, I've really reached out, made an effort to plug into others, and I'm learning. I'm learning how. Everything that I've always done, I've always kind of just done on my own. But the more I learn, the better I get. So
it's a huge gift and an art, isn't it, to be able to do that. I've got one guide that I would see quite, very regularly. He would be there for me all the time. And then all of a sudden, a couple of years ago, another kind of guy appeared, and he was like, "Well, where did you come from? What's your purpose? What's your role? Where are you taking me to? What's the next step?" And he is represented. He looks at the spitting image of Morgan Freeman, which is quite bizarre, because he stood there with a red book under his hand, and he's suited. And I don't know what that means, but I know that it means that it's taking me to a different place. If there's a hierarchy of learning, it's the next stage up. And I just knew that was the case when I saw him. But it is a bizarre feeling, reaching out and trying to understand what role your guides have in any given situation.
And I'm still learning. I've done this for the most part my whole life. As a child, never exactly knew what was going on until my mother sat me down and told me, "Okay, Kevin, it's time you know. Here it is. Here's what's going on, and here's why."
Wow.
And then, I had a small part in a military experiment in an attempt to train remote viewers. Was not very good at it, remote viewing. I was more of a medium, so they said, "We're going to utilize your talents more as a human lie detector, since you can get into people's heads and you know what's going on there."
Oh, but you can have so much fun with remote viewing, can't you?
It was an experience, I'll tell you that much. Did not like it. It always made me nauseous. But
sometimes I'll do that on stage, and to watch people's expressions when I start taking them around their house, for example, and describing their house, and you see people horrified and say things like, "I haven't tidied up. I didn't put that in the drawer. It's like, I can't see all that stuff. I can just see around the house the colour schemes, the furniture, and the layout. And it can be quite funny when you're on stage and you're taking somebody in the audience around their house.
I can see detail. As long as the spirit is seeing it, I can see it.
That's very cool. I would love to do that.
Yeah, as long as they're looking at it, I can see it. It's disorienting. But you're right. Here lately, in the last few years, I've learned to actually have fun with it.
Yeah.
Tell the spirit, "Hey, look this way, look that way," so I'll know I'm still plugged in.
Yeah.
But
I think it's important you have fun. It's a gift, but it's a gift for a reason, and that involves all the senses, the good and the bad. And, we will feel things so we can identify how people have passed. We will maybe understand something prior to it happening. We might well experience sadness and loss and extreme emotions going from happiness, etc. So if we can't have fun, if we can't see the lighter side of life, which exists in spirit as well as it exists on earth, then what purpose is there?
I got a listener actually in the chat room before I let you go. One of my listeners did a reading for her last week, and she says, "Like my closet with all those shoes." Because I said, "What is with all the shoes?" And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "You've recently purchased a bunch of shoes, and you've taken them out of the boxes, and you've got them lined up here, and I can see them all lined up."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh my God, I think that may actually be my daughter's house." So, oh my gosh. Well, Julie.
See, as you're talking there, you see I'm getting the odd purple one straight away into my head. The odd purple one, there was one odd. And I don't know what one odd purple one means, whether that relates to the shoes or something else in her house, but straight away Spirit came in with, but there's the odd purple one. So the message comes straight through.
I am going to wait and see what she says now. You can't leave yet.
No, that's cool. I'm okay.
Let's see.
Straight through the odd purple one. Like I said, I'm not sure what that relates to. Straight in there.
She says, aha. You may be right, Julie. Come on, V. You got to respond to that.
Yeah, don't leave us hanging. It's 4 o'clock in the morning here in the UK.
We're waiting on you, V. Pressure. No pressure, but there's pressure. But
it's not even 8 at night here yet.
Purple.
Okay, Al, okay.
She says that purple is her favorite color.
Well, that's good news. But I'm not calling her the odd purple one, though. Just to let you know, there is definitely an odd purple one, but I don't know what it is. It's not her.
Yeah, she's not a Teletubby. So.
No.
Or am I dating myself for that? Well, Julie, we're going to have you back and actually do readings. I think this is going to be fun.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it. It'd be really good. It'd be really good fun. And it'd be really good if we do some experiments as well where we link into the same person and give readings. That can work really well and really validate some of the information we're getting, because when 2 mediums can link into one person and both read for that same person, that's really something special to listen to. So,
well, you're right. 2 mediums actually make a large. So.
Wow. Okay, take me out of that equation. Otherwise, it'd be a diet tomorrow.
No, I'm just being silly. It's late and.
It's all cool. I look forward to it. Really look forward to it.
But, well, Julie, we are at the end of this show. Thank you so much. I am so honored. I am so glad you joined us. And
it's been lovely, and I can't wait to do it again. It's been really good, and thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm honored to call you friend, and I can, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. See, Al? People like me.
Yeah.
You were wrong. Well, Julie, thank you.
Al is chuckling nervously, Kevin.
No.
I'm giving him a hard time. I love Al. But yes, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Julie.
No worries. Thank you. Have a great day.
You have a great night. What's left of it?
My 2 hours. Yeah, definitely will do.
Before you roll out to work. Good night, Julie.
Good night.
Good night.
Well, Al, that was great, man. That was so much fun. I am so glad that you got us in touch.
Yeah, she's very, very interesting person. Very interesting.
I mean, that was great. And, I was able to relate to everything she said.
Yeah,
It was very educational. And if her show is anything like tonight, it's going to be an awesome, awesome show.
I think so. I think she's going to be really, really good, and it'd be very interesting for people. She also has done stage shows with like the, psychic healers and stuff too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's very interesting.
And that has got to be difficult. I'm still thinking about, like you said, doing large venues like that. That has got to. I mean, you've got so many eyes on you. That is intimidating. Oh, did I lose you, Al? Uh-oh. Well, I think I lost him. Well, I tell you what, I am just going to keep going. We've got about 2 minutes left in the show, so everybody, I'm going to go ahead and get ready to sign off. You have been listening to The Buzz on ztalkradio.com. We'll be back next week, next Monday, with another great guest. So everybody, we will see you next Monday, and good night.
This has been a Spooky Scotty production.